Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are looking at, honestly, one of the most mind-bending places on our entire planet. Just imagine standing on the very edge of the world, staring across this freezing expanse of water, and knowing that the landmass you see in the distance doesn't just belong to another country, it literally belongs to another day. We're going to explore what feels like an actual glitch in the Matrix. It's this real-world geographic anomaly that sounds like it was pulled straight out of a high-concept sci-fi movie. But the wild part is it totally exists, and it happens every single day.
So can you walk into tomorrow? Seriously, just take a second to think about that concept. We're so used to the rigid, forward march of time. But is it truly possible to travel by foot from the United States to Russia, and by the time your boots hit the ground on the other side, you've actually stepped straight into the future? I mean, it sounds completely impossible, right? Like something that absolutely defies the laws of physics.
Okay, let's dive into this because the answer is absolutely yes. The key to this entire mystery comes down to a surprisingly small number, and that is 20. 20 minutes. That's the time it takes to, brew a pot of coffee or listen to a few songs. But here, it's the exact amount of time it takes to physically cross an international boundary on foot. It is an incredibly brief journey.
But here's where the extreme juxtaposition comes into play, and you really have to let this sink in. While you're only walking for a mere 20 minutes, this incredibly short, mundane physical journey propels you a massive 21 hours into the future. It's a total paradox. A 20-minute physical walk equals a 21-hour chronological leap. You are literally trading minutes of physical effort for nearly a full rotation of the Earth in terms of time. Just wild.
To understand how this is even possible, we gotta zoom way out and look at the freezing, unforgiving waters of the Bering Strait. This is an incredibly harsh, isolated environment right at the top of the globe. It's the extremely narrow stretch of ocean that physically separates the westernmost edge of Alaska and the United States from the easternmost edge of Siberia and Russia. It's basically a place where two massive continents very nearly touch.
And right in the very middle of this freezing, turbulent water, well, that's where we find our main subjects. They are two tiny, rocky, totally isolated outposts sitting perfectly in the crosshairs of these two global landmasses. They're known as Little Diomede and Big Diomede. They are incredibly remote, constantly battered by extreme weather, and yet they're the absolute perfect stage for one of the most fascinating geographic quirks on Earth.
Now, the geopolitical contrast here is just staggering. Little Diomede belongs to the United States, while Big Diomede is officially part of Russia, which is deeply ironic when you think about it. These are two colossal global superpowers, right? Nations that span massive continents and have practically defined modern history. Yet right here in the Bering Strait, they're separated by a distance so small you could practically shout across it. They're only about 2.4 miles apart. They are literal next-door neighbors.
So, how do you actually walk between two islands separated by an ocean? Well, in the dead of winter, the harsh reality of this freezing environment completely takes over. The temperatures plummet so unbelievably low that the water in the strait freezes completely solid. It forms a natural sheer ice bridge connecting the two lands. You are literally standing on frozen ocean water. And this temporary winter ice bridge is exactly what makes that 20-minute walk physically possible.
It's a tiny physical gap, sure, but it represents an incredibly profound divide. In biology, there's something called the Wallace Line. It's a famous, narrow stretch of water in Indonesia that separates entirely different evolutionary worlds, where you have Asian animal species on one side and Australian on the other. Well, just like that profound biological boundary, the physical distance between the Diomede Islands is almost nothing, but the invisible divide they represent is monumental.
But it's not just the physical or political distance that makes this so fascinating. It is the sheer time distance. We are looking at a literal, invisible time barrier. As your body moves just a couple of miles across the ice, the watch on your wrist gets thrown into a completely different day. This is the chronological mind-bender that causes that massive 21-hour gap between two islands you can clearly see from each other's shores.
And here is the geographic aha moment that explains it all. Running directly between these two islands is the international date line. This is the invisible, human-made boundary that snakes its way down the Pacific Ocean, dictating exactly where one official calendar day ends and the next one begins. And it just so happens to slice right through that tiny 2.4-mile gap.
Let's visualize this glitch together, because it is just surreal. Imagine standing on the freezing, rocky shores of Little Diomede. It's a calm Saturday morning. You look straight across the icy water, and the landmass you are staring at, so close you can clearly make out its features, is already experiencing Sunday morning. You're not just looking at Russia, you are quite literally looking into tomorrow.
And this brings up a truly fascinating comparison about the boundaries we live with. Deep-sea straits and shifting tectonic plates created these massive physical and biological barriers over millions of years of natural evolution. The Earth shaped those divides. But time zones? This chronological barrier was completely engineered by humans. We created the international dateline to keep our global trade, communication, and calendars in perfect sync. We essentially engineered our own glitch in reality.
So the crucial point is, because of this invisible line we've drawn on the map, Big Diomede operates on a completely different timeline. Since it sits just on the Russian side of the international dateline, its clock is perpetually, relentlessly, nearly a full day ahead of its American neighbor. The sun rises and sets on both islands at almost the exact same time, but the calendar insists they are worlds apart.
To really wrap our heads around this abstract concept, let's look at a fun, practical thought experiment. Because this isn't just a quirky trivia fact. It creates the potential for some truly bizarre real-world scenarios. I like to call this the ultimate New Year's Eve hack, and it is honestly the perfect way to understand just how warped this time boundary really is.
Here is exactly how a person could pull this off. Step 1. You bundle up, count down to midnight, and celebrate New Year's Eve popping champagne on Big Diomede in Russia. Step 2. You step out onto the freezing winter ice bridge and embark on a 20-minute trek back into the past. Step 3. You arrive on Little Diomede in the US, and you find yourself perfectly positioned to do it all over again 24 hours later. You basically get 2 midnight countdowns in 2 different years on the exact same night. How cool is that?
And this brilliantly illustrates why this geographical oddity matters so much and why it's so captivating. When we superimpose our rigid human-made lines and boundaries onto the chaotic beauty of physical geography, it can completely warp our understanding of time. It takes a simple 20-minute walk and turns our entire perception of reality, past and future, completely upside down.
It really leaves you wondering what else is out there, doesn't it? Our planet is full of these fascinating tales, hidden quirks, and invisible boundaries quietly bending the rules of reality, just waiting to be explored. So what other geographic mysteries should we dive into next? Let us know, and until next time, keep questioning the lines we draw on the map.